They told me never to enter Blackwood Forest after sundown, but I didn't listen because my brother vanished, and the only clue he left behind was the last thing he whispered to me the night before. He disappeared. He said the woods are watching, and those words echoed in my head as I stepped into the dark with nothing but a failing flashlight and a fear that had haunted me since childhood, the fear of being consumed by the dark. The trees stood like twisted giants, their branches curling down as if they wanted to drag me deeper. Every sound felt too close. Every step I took seemed to draw something nearer than I saw it hanging from a branch, a torn sleeve from his jacket, proof that he had come this way, but also proof that something else had followed him. The deeper I went, the more I noticed the carvings on the trees, not random, not the work of bored hikers, but symbols spiraled and clawed into the bark, marks that seemed alive, still fresh, still bleeding into one another. When I touched one, it was warm, as though the wood itself had been seared only moments ago, and then I heard it, a breathing, low, guttural, heavy, like the earth itself, inhaling and exhaling, surrounding me, pressing against me. I spun in circles, but the sound came from everywhere. Nowhere at once. My flashlight flickered and my chest tightened, and my mind screamed to run, but my body refused to move. And then I saw eyes, two pale, unblinking eyes staring between the trees, too high to belong to a man, too fixed to belong to an animal. They were waiting, watching, drinking in my fear. The air smelled of rot and iron, thick enough to choke me. I forced myself to look away and found the carvings again. They weren't random. They formed a path, a message, a desperate warning from someone who had walked here before me. Maybe my brother, maybe someone else lost forever. The path led me into a clearing where I found his backpack, torn open, shredded, empty. No phone, no wallet. Nothing human left behind except the dirt clinging to the fabric. And the smell, the same rotting iron smell that burned my throat. I pressed forward because I had to, because there was no turning back, because something behind me moved with every step I took. I felt it in the ground, in the air, in my chest, something heavy, something patient. I tripped on something half buried in the soil, and when I reached down, I pulled out his phone. The screen was shattered, the battery dead, but across the glass, smeared in something dark, was a single word, stay, and as I read it, I realized the carvings were not a warning for me, they were a warning from him, and by the time I understood, it was too late. The breathing grew louder, heavier, closer. The eyes appeared again, this time not just watching, but advancing, each blinkless second closer. To me, the forest tilted, the ground seemed to pulse, my skin crawled with the weight of something pressing down from the trees, from the soil, from the shadows, and I ran, though I don't remember my legs moving. I don't remember how I made it out of the woods. I don't remember the path home, but I remember the sound, the breathing, following just behind me, growing faster, heavier, hungrier. I burst from the tree line, but the air outside the forest felt no lighter, no safer. It clung to me. It clung to my skin, my chest, my mind. And now nights are never silent, not anymore. When the world is quiet, when I lie awake in the dark, I hear it, the breathing, low, guttural, patient, waiting, and I know it never stayed in the forest. I know it followed me out, and it is still here, watching, waiting, hungry. They told me the old house at Raven Hollow was cursed. They told me no one who stepped inside after nightfall ever came out the same, but when my best friend disappeared during a dare, I couldn't leave him behind. I walked up the crumbling steps with a dying lantern, and a fear that had owned me since childhood. The fear of being alone in a place that should not exist. The wood groaned beneath my feet, and the door opened as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, the air was thick with mold and dust, but beneath it was another smell, sharp, metallic, like rust or blood. The wallpaper peeled in strips like rotting flesh, and the stairs loomed ahead, each step sighing, as if something moved just out of sight. I found his cap lying on the floor near the baseboard, torn, dirty, smeared with something dark, proof he had been here, proof something else had taken him. I called his name, but the house answered, not with an echo, but with a whisper, my own voice, twisted and fed back to me from the walls, telling me to turn around, to leave before I understood. and then I saw the first mark carved deep into the wood. A spiral long and jagged, cutting through the beams like claws. I followed it down the hallway, though every step dragged me deeper into a silence that pressed against my chest. The rooms on either side were wrong, their angles bent, their windows opening onto nothing. But brick walls, some doors wouldn't open, others opened by themselves, and every time I passed, I felt eyes watching me from the darkness within. I gripped the lantern tighter, but its flame guttered, and the shadows moved even when I stood still. I reached the end of the hall and found his shoe half buried in dust, as if it had been there for years, but I knew it was fresh because the laces were still tied. I bent down to grab it, and that was when I heard the sound, low, ragged breathing. Not behind me, not above, not below, but inside the walls surrounding me. The boards seemed to pulse with it, as if the house itself was inhaling and exhaling. The lantern flickered, and I saw something in the reflection of a broken mirror, not behind me, not beside me, but standing where I should have been, tall, thin, its head bent too far to one side, its mouth too wide, its eyes pale and endless. I turned, but nothing was there, only the marks carved deeper into the floor, leading down into the basement. I didn't want to go, but I had to because his voice came from below, faint, broken, begging me to help. So I went down the stairs, each one cracking as if they might give way, and in the basement. The air was damp, the walls slick, and the floor littered with scraps of clothing. Keys, wallets, shoes, things left behind by others who had entered but never returned. In the center of the room, I saw him, my friend, crouched in the corner, his back to me, his body shaking. I reached out, but when he turned, his face was wrong, his eyes pale, his mouth stretched too wide, his jaw trembling as he whispered a word that made my blood run cold. Stay. And then the lantern went out, and in the dark, I felt it move between us, tall, thin, too close, breathing against my ear, and I ran, though I don't remember the stairs. I don't remember the door, I don't remember how I made it out, but I remember the sound behind me. Every step closer, every breath colder, pressing against my neck. I stumbled into the night air, but it didn't leave me. Now every house I enter, every hallway I walk, every mirror I glance into, I see it in the corner of my eye, pale and still waiting. I hear the breathing in the walls, I hear my friend's voice whispering, stay, and I know I never escaped Raven Hollow. I only brought it with me. They told me the old railway tunnel beneath Ashford was sealed for a reason. They said it was abandoned after workers went missing, inside swallowed by the dark. But when I found my cousin's bike chained near the entrance, I knew he had gone in, and I had no choice but to follow. The fear that had owned me since childhood was waiting there, the fear of being buried alive. The air grew colder as I stepped past the rusted gate, my flashlight cutting through thick damp air, the walls dripping with water that tasted of iron and ash. Every sound echoed too loud, every step repeated back to me like someone walking just behind. I found his backpack torn open near the tracks, his books scattered, his flashlight cracked, still warm, as if he had only dropped it moments before I called his name. But the tunnel answered with whispers, whispers that weren't mine, words I couldn't understand, crawling across the stone. I pressed forward because I had to. The deeper I went, the more the walls changed, not stone anymore, but covered in marks. Long clawed scratches gouged into the brick like something had scraped its way through. From the other side, my light sputtered, and I smelled something sharp and metallic like fresh blood, and then I heard it, the breathing, slow, heavy, dragging. It came from the dark ahead of me and behind me and above me all at once. The tunnel seemed endless, twisting, bending, stretching farther than it should have. I passed piles of clothing, shoes, rusted watches, things abandoned by others who had walked this way long before me. I tripped on something soft, and when I looked down, it was a hand, pale, shriveled, half buried in the gravel. But when I blinked, it was gone. The whispering grew louder, closer, faster, and my cousin's voice called my name, but it was wrong, too stretched, too hollow. I followed it because I couldn't stop myself, because if I turned back, I knew something would be waiting behind me. I found him crouched near the wall, his back turned, his shoulders shaking. I grabbed him, but when he looked at me, his face wasn't his face anymore. His eyes pale and empty, his mouth trembling as he whispered the word run. My flashlight died, and in the dark, I felt it, something tall filling the tunnel, its skin brushing against both walls, its breath hot against the back of my neck. My cousin's voice still whispering run, but his body never moved. I don't remember how I got out of the tunnel. I don't remember the climb back to the surface, but I know I didn't escape alone, because every night when the world is quiet, I hear the tunnel again. I hear the whispers crawling through my walls. I hear the breathing in my room, slow, heavy, patient waiting. And I know the tunnel never ends, it only follows.